Good evening, I'm Prarambha, Dahal. Let's begin with the main stories. An officer and the chief of the Office of the Immigration at Trivandrum International Airport manhandled by the police as dispute ensued during security checking at the departure section. CPN Maoist Center changes parliamentary party leader in Sudhir Paschim province. Man Bahadur Dhami appointed. Preparations underway to recall 2 ministers. Alabama executes convicted murderer Kenneth Smith, who held his breath in vain as officials asphyxiated him with nitrogen gas in the first use of a new method of capital punishment. And Akash Chand signs with the ball for Nepal as he picks a fifer against Afghanistan at the ICC Under-19 Cricket World Cup. Nepal chasing a target of 146 runs. Trivandrum International Airport police have manhandled an office and the chief of the immigration unit as dispute ensued during security procedures earlier this morning. Immigration officer Chayalal Muktan had reportedly gone to the departure area from the arrivals, and during the security procedure, Muktan had questioned why he was being checked despite him being the immigration staff and that he did not have any metal in possession. Following his grievance, chief of the immigration office Hamal had inquired on the incident and checked the CCTV footage, which showed that the security officer had misbehaved with Muktan. When Hamal questioned the security personnel regarding the incident, the latter reportedly kicked Muktan as well. Hamal too was affected during the incident. The Ministry of Home Affairs has been informed of the incident and discussion is underway in the presence of DIG Arjun Chand. Lack of faith has surfaced between the parties of the alliance because of the result of the National Assembly election in Koshi province. In yesterday's election, 18 from the ruling alliance were elected, while main opposition CPN-UML grabbed 1 seat. After the candidate of the ruling coalition crossed the floor in Koshi province, CPN Maoist Center has alleged alliance partner Nepali Congress of betrayal. Maoist leaders have said that they would raise the issue of the defeat of their candidate with the alliance. Min Vishwakarma of Nepali Congress has also said that the party would discuss the loss suffered by the candidate of CPN Maoist Center in Koshi as Rukmini Koilala of CPN-UML was elected. 3 province assembly members of the alliance, chair and deputy chair of local levels, voted for her as CPN Maoist Center's Champa Devi Karki lost the election. UML and Rashtriya Prajatantra Party had collaborated in Koshi. Rashtriya Prajatantra Party has also alleged UML of not voting for their candidate. Their candidate Uddhav Paudel lost to Krishna Prasad Sitola of Nepali Congress. Despite victory for candidates of the alliance in other provinces, issues have surfaced regarding the vote differences. Meanwhile, CPN Maoist Center has emerged as the largest party of the National Assembly. 10 members of Nepali Congress, 5 of CPN Maoist Center, 2 of CPN Unified Socialist and 1 each of Janata Samajwadi Party and CPN-UML were elected from yesterday's election. Nepali Congress will now have 16 members at the National Assembly, while CPN Maoist Center will have 17 seats. Meanwhile, CPN-UML will be restricted to 10 seats and CPN Unified Socialist will have 8 seats. Janata Samajwadi Party will retain 1 seat at the upper house. The CPN Maoist Center has changed its parliamentary party leader in Sudhir Paschim province. Today's meeting appointed Man Bahadur Dhami as the new parliamentary party leader of Sudhir Paschim province assembly with majority votes. Of the 11 province assembly members, including Sudhir Paschim province assembly speaker, 6 voted in favor of Dhami, who previously was the chief whip of the party as well. According to province assembly member Shiva Singh Oli, notice of the change in the parliamentary party leader was submitted to the province assembly secretariat, while Dhami has assumed office today itself. The meeting held to change the leader was not attended by former leader Khagaraj Vatta, Minister for Industries, Tourism, Forest and Environment Ramesh Dhami, Minister for Social Development Jhapat South and Province Assembly member Janaki Paudel Kunwar. Province Assembly member Oli said that they had not attended the meeting despite being invited. Prior to this, majority of the Sudhir Paschim province assembly members of CPN Maoist Center had reached party chair and Prime Minister Pushpakamal Dahal with their demand of change in the leader. With the change in the leader, CPN Maoist Center is also likely to change its ministers in Sudhir Paschim province. Ramesh Singh Dhami is the current Minister for Industries, Tourism, Forest and Environment. Geeta Devi Mal is the State Minister, while Chapad South is the Minister for Social Development. CPN Maoist Center is making preparations to recall Dhami and South. The party has said that the decision had to be taken because of the failure of the ministers to prioritize the issues of public concerns. Now, parliamentarians have called for serious legal actions against those destroying significant and historic documents of the state. Addressing the meeting of the International Relations and the Tourism Committee, the parliamentarians have demanded for strict actions and fines against those destroying documents of historic significance. Parliamentarians have also said that the provisions for actions in the Archives Preservation Act 1989 were inadequate. CPN Unified Socialist Chairperson Madhav Kumar Nepal said that the sentence of 5 years was not enough for those destroying important archives of the country. Rashtriya Swatantra Party's Sumana Shrestha said that a sentence of 20 years had to be slapped against those found guilty of destroying such historic documents. She also demanded for digital preservation of the archives. Raghuji Panta of CPN-UML said that such documents of national importance should not be taken out of Nepal. He also called for mandatory attendance of the minister while discussing on the bill. It is now time for our segment Public Pulse, where you text us with your opinion.
Public Pulse.
The question is, what do you think of the floor crossing within the ruling alliance during the National Assembly election? Your options are A. Hint of falling alliance, B. Factionalism within Nepali Congress, and C. Normal during elections. The voting is on. Type NEWS, select your option A, B or C and send it to 34001 to share your opinion with us. Farmers of Madhes who had not received seedlings and fertilizers during wheat plantation are now facing problems related to irrigation. Water is required 22 days after wheat plantation. However, even in absence of irrigation facilities, farmers are compelled to use water from other methods by paying huge amounts. Farmers of Nagarain village who could not enjoy good harvest of paddy because of inadequate rainfall did not receive fertilizers and seedlings for wheat plantation on time. Instead of leaving their agricultural fields barren, they brought seedlings from India for plantation. Time has come for irrigating the fields. However, water is hard to find. The farmers who had used tractors at 300 rupees per katta of land have been paying 400 rupees per hour for watering their fields. They have also been using pumping sets for this purpose. With the farmers facing problems related to irrigation, the province government has constructed a dam under the Pipara Mine irrigation project at an investment of 120 million rupees. 3 deep boring projects have also been set up at an investment of more than 15 million rupees. However, the farmers are yet to benefit from these facilities. Madhes province has 574,360 hectares of arable land, of which wheat is planted in 174,151 hectares. Government data shows that 75% of the arable land, which is 357,793 hectares, is irrigated in the province. Despite the claim, all farmers have yet to receive water. Issues of flooding during monsoon and drought in other seasons have increased in Madhes in recent years. Time now for the international news. Alabama on Thursday executed convicted murderer Kenneth Smith, who held his breath in vain as officials asphyxiated him with nitrogen gas, the first use of a new method of capital punishment since lethal injections began in the U.S. 4 decades ago. Smith, convicted of a 1988 murder for hire, was a rare prisoner who had already survived 1 execution attempt. In November 2022, Alabama officials aborted his execution by lethal injection after struggling for hours to insert an intravenous lines needle in his body. The state has called its new closely watched protocol the most painless and humane method of execution known to man. It predicted Smith would lose consciousness in under a minute and die soon after, although witnesses said it appeared to take several minutes longer. Alabama has touted asphyxiation as a simpler alternative for prison systems that struggle to find either veins or the required drugs for lethal injections. Human rights groups, United Nations torture experts and lawyers for Smith had sought to prevent it, saying the method was risky, experimental, and could lead to an agonizing death or non-fatal injury. In Smith's second and final trip to the execution chamber, executioners restrained him in a gurney and strapped a commercial industrial safety respirator mask to his face. A canister of pure nitrogen was attached to the mask that, once flowing, deprived him of oxygen. The execution began at 7:53 p.m. local time, and Smith was declared dead at 8:25 p.m. Smith appeared to remain conscious for several minutes after the nitrogen was activated, according to 5 journalists who were allowed to watch the execution through glass as media witnesses. Now, although the mask was also secured to the gurney, he then began shaking his head and writhing for about 2 minutes, and then could be seen breathing deeply for several minutes before his breathing slowed and became imperceptible, the witnesses said. The Gaza Strip is slipping into a more disastrous situation as hundreds of thousands of people suffering from a chronic lack of food and water face an acute risk of famine, a UN humanitarian official in Gaza has warned. UN officials reported that thousands of homeless Palestinians have sought refuge in Rafah on the border between Gaza and Egypt after Israeli forces ordered for more than 30,000 civilians inside a UN-operated center in Khan Yunis to leave. Briefing journalists in New York City from Jerusalem, Jamie McGoldrick, the interim deputy special coordinator and resident coordinator at the Office of the United Nations Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process, said that the UN family and its partners are trying the best they can to get through, but they are faced with massive challenges. Many of them are beyond control. People are fleeing Khan Yunis as the city in the Gaza Strip's south comes under intensive Israeli attacks in the ongoing conflict. Khan Yunis has been seeing widespread devastation and killing over the past few days. Even areas that are designated by Israeli forces as safe zones are not free from the deadly violence. It comes as bombardments from air, land and sea are getting increasingly intense in the southern sector of Gaza since the war began on October 7 as Israeli tanks surged across Khan Yunis towards the Mediterranean coast. People have been asked to leave some blocks and zones as the Israeli forces advance deeper into the city. Those who initially decided to stay in shelters are also forced to leave after a lethal incident happened in that area. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East stated on Wednesday that its training center was hit by 2 tank rounds in Khan Yunis in southern Gaza and 9 people were killed and 75 others injured. The Israel Defense Forces issued a statement on Thursday saying that in the past day, the Israeli army killed dozens of Hamas militants in Khan Yunis, destroyed multiple Hamas military strongholds, and seized a large amount of weapons and equipment. 5 years on from a dam collapse that killed hundreds in Brazil, family members of the victims say they are still seeking justice. January 25 marks the 5th anniversary of the Brumadinho disaster when the collapse of a tailings dam at a whale-owned mine unleashed a wave of mud, killing 270 people and damaging homes, forests and rivers. Whale has reported it remains committed to Brumadinho repairs, adding it has reached deals with more than 15,400 people to pay for damages. Researchers of China's 40th Antarctic Expedition team have detected changes in the population and distribution of 2 penguin species on Adelaide Island as rising global temperatures impact the fate of the flightless birds. Chinese researchers have been implementing field surveys on the Adelaide Island this month, and the data they collected showed that the population of Adelaide penguins has dropped sharply in recent years, leaving just 200 nests of them on the island. By contrast, the number of nests of Gento penguins on the island has risen to 8,000. Chinese researchers said that Adelaide penguins live in the colder regions closer to the South Pole, while the Gento penguins are predominantly found in the warmer sub-Antarctic region where the year-round temperature averages around 5 degrees Celsius. Now, thousands of Australians gathered in state capitals today to celebrate Australia's National Day, with 320 citizenship ceremonies being held across the country. Australia Day commemorates the day Britain established the state of New South Wales as a penal colony, arriving in what is now the state capital, Sydney, with the first fleet bringing colonists and convicts. Many people celebrate the day with barbecues and trips to the beach, and it is also a popular date for immigrants to receive their Australian citizenship. The day is also marked by protests across the country, with thousands marching in solidarity with Indigenous Australians and calling to change the date, which marks the start of injustices suffered by Indigenous Australians since colonization. India celebrated its 75th Republic Day today with a parade in New Delhi that showcased the country's military prowess, tradition and culture. Ahead of the parade, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi laid a wreath of flower at a war memorial. This year's guest of honor was French President Emmanuel Macron. A French marching band and contingent also took part in the lavish parade, reciprocating the participation of Indian troops and aircraft in the 2023 Bastille Day parade in Paris. India won independence from British rule on August 15, 1947, but it was not until January 26, 1950 that the nation declared itself a sovereign republic state with the adoption of its own constitution. And now, before we wrap up, here's a look into the top stories one more time. An officer and the chief of the Office of the Immigration at Trivandrum International Airport manhandled by the security personnel as dispute ensued during security checking at the departure session. CPM Center changes parliamentary party leader in Sudhir Paschim province. Man Bahadur Dhami appointed. Preparations underway to recall 2 ministers. Alabama executes convicted murderer Kenneth Smith, who held his breath in vain as officials asphyxiated him with nitrogen gas in the first use of a new method of capital punishment. And Akash Chand shines with the ball for Nepal as he picks up fifer against Afghanistan at the ICC Under-19 Cricket World Cup. Nepal chasing a target of 146 runs. That is all for the moment. Our next English bulletin airs at 10:30 p.m. Thank you for staying with us. Goodbye for now.